Today on iConnect, I'm joined by Matt Selby, Head of Support at Ocular Melanoma UK, with a background in healthcare and a deep understanding of the challenges faced by people living with ocular melanoma. Matt works closely with patients, families and carers all across the United Kingdom, helping people access emotional support, psychological services, practical guidance and connection within the OM community. In this episode, we talk about what support really means after diagnosis, why nobody should feel alone in a rare cancer, and the incredible power of community, conversation, and understanding. Matt, welcome to iConnect. Thank you for joining us today. I've explained a little bit about you, kind of what you do, who you are, but would you like to tell us how you came about working for Ocular Melanoma UK and your actual job role while you're with us?
Yeah, of course. So I left university in 2015, but while I was studying, I got myself a job in the urgent care service. So I worked in a bit of a unique scenario. We worked in a clinical hub that was run by the ambulance service. So in there we had kind of the 111 service, 999, and all different kind of urgent care doctors and different services that ran out of the hub. So I started my career there as an urgent care call handler. So I was quite often speaking with people in distress, sometimes in emergency situations, sometimes people calling up with much less serious problems. But I kind of developed my career after I left university. I stayed with the ambulance service and went on to progress into an operational management role. After that, I moved on to work in other primary care networks and with Dorset Healthcare and Poole Primary Care Network. So my role kind of progressed over the years. It was not a clinical role. I managed a lot of clinical teams. I have to run clinical services. And I really started to kind of enjoy helping people and realizing that I developed my communication skills quite well. I was able to kind of help people in distressing situations and all sorts of different problems. So after many years of working in the NHS and the urgent care service, I realised that the pressure was quite high, and I decided to take a little bit of a step back and find something a little bit more suited to my lifestyle. And I came across Ocular Melanoma as a charity who were initially looking for a call handler to run their support helpline for their members. And the role kind of fit perfectly for me. It was a lot slower paced than urgent care. And I was able to really kind of make a difference. Well, I recognised that I'd be able to make a difference with people and help kind of support them through just navigating really the urgent care setting in the NHS and obviously people with this rare cancer. So, like I said, I joined in 2022, initially just running the helpline and speaking with members. And over the years, my role has developed and I brought in a lot of the expertise and skills that I developed as an operational manager to kind of help bolster out the services that we offer, to the point now where I work as the head of support for OMUK and I oversee all of our support services that our members interact with.
That's fabulous. And I don't think our members understand quite how much we can offer and how much you have brought as a valued team member to us. So coming from an urgent care setting into a charity that supports people with a cancer that I would imagine you probably never even came across during all your time in the healthcare profession. How was that?
It was definitely a lot slower of a pace than urgent care. So I went from kind of supporting people in quite distressing, dire situations that needed emergency help to supporting people sometimes quite equally distressed, but not as in much of a need as that urgent support. So I had no real knowledge about ocular melanoma itself, but my skills were quite transferable. So I'm able to, one of the benefits of working in the NHS for many years is I understand the services and the nuances of how they all operate. So a lot of my skills were useful in helping people understand making the best of their team, navigating the system, just generally kind of practical advice to begin with. And then over the years, my understanding of the condition has developed massively so that I can actually really support people with really making the most of their team, giving them real reliable information and just helping them kind of being that supportive hand for them when they need it to, like I say, to get what they need out of their team or find the support they need, or sometimes signposting them to a local service that is more rurally closer to them.
Yeah, I mean, accessibility for a lot of our patients, it can be a real challenge. So the fact that you're able to actually navigate them through the pathway to be within the care system, but actually somewhere that is so much closer to them at home. I mean, some people, I know we've got members all over the country, and then we've got these specialist centres that deal with ocular melanoma because it's so rare. How have you found, and actually, do you deal with any of these local centres? Have you ever had to make a phone call or send an email to someone to say, I've got people with ocular melanoma, will you be able to handle that?
Yes, yeah, I do. There have been times when I've had to reach out to other charities or other services to kind of direct someone to for more specific specialist advice. And it's not always necessarily that they need that support with their OM. It might be another element of their life, like help with their employer or understanding the benefits and support system. So it's, yeah, I've made referrals before for people. When it comes to kind of the clinical setting and their team, I don't get involved too much in that side of things. So, like I said, I'm not here to give anyone any clinical advice, but I can sometimes, I have a responsibility for our members. So if there's something like a safeguarding concern or someone really isn't able to communicate well with their team or they're struggling to maybe liaise with them and get the support they need, sometimes I can step in. But a lot of the time I really empower our members to advocate for themselves or help support their loved ones. So it's not always a patient that I deal with. Sometimes our members are people that are supporting patients or other people that have been affected by someone else's condition. So there's many aspects to the role, and like I say, it's not with it not always being a patient. There's so many different elements of support that I can give people. So yeah, I sometimes do have to refer people.
And so the emotional side of the diagnosis, as you say, for family, relatives, close friends, or carers and loved ones, is massive. Now, I know it's wonderful that our partners and family are able to access the services through OMUK, but as a charity, we do offer psychological support. So, would somebody come to you first, Matt?
Very often, quite often, people are seen in their primary care centre, so they're quite often seen by a specialist who really understands their condition. But once they've had their treatment, they don't always end up under someone else who really, really understands their condition. So my role varies really. Sometimes I can just be kind of just someone to listen to help support them. But there's such a huge psychological impact of having this disease. I think I break it down for a lot of people. I think you have your primary treatment when you obviously got the shock of being diagnosed and being treated for the condition. And then there's a second element of this disease, unfortunately, that is kind of like living with cancer. As you understand, some of our members, some of the patients that have been diagnosed with this can go on to develop metastatic disease in other areas, quite commonly in the liver. And that has a huge psychological impact on people living with those regular scans, having to have regular contact with their team. It's always kind of in the back of their mind. It's not something they can ever fully let go of. And as a charity, we recognise that there is a huge psychological impact, not only with the, like I say, the primary diagnosis and the uprooting of your life and the change of your circumstances and going through this whole treatment, but then going on to realise that you potentially do have a long life ahead of you. And as part of that, we do refer people to health we work with some amazing health psychologists. I don't know if you've interviewed Laura or any of the other team, but we're able to refer people to get that support. It's a little bit more specialist, a little bit more skilled than what I can provide, and really kind of help empower people to just make the most of the life that they have really with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the psychological support services are accessible to any of our members. And I think initially we offer 6 sessions, and then at review, if we feel things are needed, or if somebody were to then go on to progress further disease or their situation changes, I presume we'd come back via you for another referral. And how does that work?
Members can access our psychological support service through the website, but I quite often would recommend for them to contact me first on the helpline, just because sometimes their issue sometimes their issue is down to a lack of information or something that I can help kind of talk them through or give advice on to begin with. I'm not there to substitute or do any part of our psychological support service role, but I can help people often by listening and sometimes giving practical advice just to really help with their issue.
I'm sure you find sometimes that people kind of talk themselves around to actually kind of finding their own answers. It's just living with a diagnosis like this. It's almost just like having super noodles in your head most of the time. Nothing makes any sense until you start to kind of unravel it and slowly kind of talk through things. I mean, just a reassurance of knowing that somebody is there like yourself at the back end of such a rare diagnosis that nobody's heard of can be actually all the support that somebody might need. Why do you think in such a rare cancer community that your service and the services that we offer through OMUK are so vital?
I think just off the top of it, having a rare cancer can just be very isolating in itself. A lot of the time when people are diagnosed with a condition, they can speak with family members. Someone knows someone else who's been through it, and sometimes people can provide those helpful tips or this helped with this person found this useful. But with a rare cancer, it can be very, very isolating. I spoke to a gentleman the other day who was diagnosed 10 years ago, and he joined one of our community support meetings, and he said in the last 10 years, he had only ever spoke to one person who had known of this condition or known someone who had it. And in the morning of joining the community support meeting, he was able to meet 5 people in 1 hour that also had the same condition and understood a lot of the same problems that he had. So there's a lot of problems that are very unique to this type of cancer as well. So not everyone understands. And I think people try to be helpful and try to empathize with family members or with patients, but they don't really understand what they're going through and they don't really understand the impact on their life. And sometimes the comments people make trying to be supportive sometimes can not come across the right way. So I think having that connection and being able to meet other people in this space who have gone through treatment, who are living with this condition is vital. And also another huge element of it is I think when people are newly diagnosed, it's all encompassing. It's all they think about. They think that their life's over because absolutely everything's changed. And I think it's really powerful to see people who are kind of post 15, 16 years down the line from a diagnosis, gone on to live very normal, very healthy, very fulfilling lives. And I think especially in those early stages when you can feel quite isolated, you feel like your world's come to an end and you have all this uncertainty about whether your life's even going to continue to begin with, I think it's so important to meet other people who, like I say, have just gone through the process, have got back to normality and then gone on to have really fulfilling lives after.
They've gone on to get married. They've gone on to have children. We love a baby photo in the Facebook group. It's like, yes, new life on board. So you mentioned community support meetings. How often do these run, and how do you become involved? How does a member become involved in this?
So the community support meetings, they are one of the elements of the support we provide for people, but those meetings specifically, we hold on a weekly basis. So on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of every month, we do an evening session, which is a bit of a longer session. It usually goes on for kind of 2 hours or so from 6 in the evening. And then on the 2nd and 4th Friday of every month, we hold a coffee morning where people can join myself, and it's for an hour and talk through things. So the Tuesday session, both myself and Joe, our CEO, join them. And that's just one element of the service that we offer. So people can access them through our website or through if they're already as a member, they'll get sent information about these and they can join on Eventbrite. And they're virtual meetings. So we host them using the Zoom platform. And we get quite a good turnout. We've got some members that are really regular and like to come to the meeting almost kind of fortnightly. And some people will just drop in maybe once, twice a year, or maybe as and when they're going through some problems that they need the support with. So like I said, the meetings themselves are quite an open forum. So people join the meeting, we give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and they can say kind of as much or as little as they want about themselves, or if they've got any particular concerns or anything, they were looking for some support. And then it kind of flows into a bit of an open discussion. One thing I would probably tell everyone is I think a lot of people could be quite hesitant to join a meeting because they think that talking about cancer is going to be a really heavy and really dense subject, and maybe it's not what they want to do at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday night. But these meetings, the feedback we get from them, from our members, is they are so uplifting. Even myself, I'm not a patient myself, but I feel quite energized just after meeting with our members, because some people in the group are so they're living such fulfilling lives. They're so positive, and they've come to terms with what they're dealing with, and they've managed to, and they can help other people and provide that support to others, which I think is amazing. It's so nice when a member joins us and they're a bit deflated at the start, and then it gets to the end and we're all talking about, like Tuesday night, we were talking about gardening by the end of it, but it was just something that people can find things that they connect with one another. And it doesn't always have to be that we're just connecting with people because they've got the same cancer as us. And people have shared interests. They can talk about how this disease affects their hobbies, affects their lifestyle, also all encompassing all aspects of their condition. And I think it's just vital, really. I think you need to be part of a community just so you've got that outreach if you need it. And the community support meetings are just, I think, the perfect forum for it.
Oh, that's fabulous. And from that, can I ask about, I know that we do have volunteers that actually try and put face-to-face things within the community. And I know this is something that the charity is working on kind of moving forward as well. But even as we stand at the moment, I know one of our very older members, I think he might be our eldest member actually, he runs the map. And there is a Google map somewhere within the Facebook group where you put your pin in and you can see where other members are. So people try and meet up, and the feedback you get from that, how's that going for people?
We definitely hear positive feedback. So you're right. Yes, we do have volunteers, different areas of the country that try to facilitate local meetups. So I don't as much oversee those because they're not the kind of the same. They are supportive in that sense, but we don't. They're not. They're more just an informal chance for people to meet other people in their area. So we've got lots of members that try to host kind of nights out, or where they go for a meal, or they meet in a mutual place, just go for a coffee in the afternoon. Because we have people spread all over the country, and some of our members will travel quite far to these meetings because that's how important they are. And I think that connection they get from meeting other people is vital for our community. So people will travel and meet up in different areas, and we do help facilitate some of the meetings. I had a few members a couple of months ago who were kind of down in a similar area wanting to connect with one another. So we set up a WhatsApp group. They managed to arrange a mutual space where they could go for a coffee. And I wasn't able to join the meeting. It was down in Cornwall, but the feedback I got from them was just, like I say, it's vital being able to connect with people. I think that is the most important thing, really.
I think a massive feeling of isolation on diagnosis, and like you say, this gentleman who joined this community support meeting and had not only ever kind of met one person in the 10 years that he'd been diagnosed, that really kind of says it all. And I know OMUK, or Ocumel as it was at the time, was a very, very small charity. It was only formed back in 2009. So we are now really developing this whole community sense and being able to offer a lot more services, I know, to our members. Supporting people through their diagnosis and then through their surveillance and onto treatment decisions is also something that I know we are able to do. Could you tell our new members and people that don't know anything about us exactly how that system works?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, when it comes to support, I generally kind of break it into two parts, really. There's that primary care, primary support. And just for some context, really, a lot of people, it's very common for people to be diagnosed when they have no symptoms, or they go to a completely routine eye exam with their optician, and then they're told, oh, we found something in your eye and we need to make an urgent referral to your local hospital, and then subsequently to one of these specialist eye centres. So that process in itself can be an absolute whirlwind for people. So some people are diagnosed and then treated within kind of weeks or less than a month at times. But where people initially are under the care of a specialist centre, they quite often get a lot of support and a lot of help at that point. But the kind of second part of their care is normally referred to a local hospital. And sometimes these hospitals aren't necessarily specialists in ocular melanoma. And us as a charity, we try to keep on top of all of the changes, things like clinical trials, treatments, all these things that go on. And it's quite hard for us to stay up to date with everything. So I can't imagine how clinicians who are working in multiple areas are able to kind of stay up to date with things like clinical trials. So my role, I don't give anyone I'm not here to give anyone clinical advice, but I can help people understand potential treatment options that they can take to their team. And sometimes people find themselves in a situation where they have to consider a clinical trial. As you might know, that in this space, treatment options can be quite limited for people. Not everyone is blessed with enough choice with treatments that they can make a choice from. And sometimes they have one treatment and it's not successful for them, and they have to explore either, in some unfortunate cases, people maybe have to self-fund for a private treatment, or they have to explore a clinical trial. Clinical trials are amazing themselves. There's some trials that have shown some quite promise, and people are able to hear about how they're doing so far and join a trial at a later stage when it's been quite developed, or got to the point where it's really showing some efficacy. So we just help people navigate that system. And on our website, we keep up to date on our website with all of the clinical trials that we're aware of, mainly focused on the UK because that's our demographic that we support. But we do also share trials that we're aware of in Europe and the States.
So have we got a section on our website that tells that people can find information out about the clinical trials?
Yes, we have a clinical trials page on our website, and we keep that as up to date as possible. So anytime we hear of anything changing, we'll kind of periodically go through it and then keep the website updated. Sometimes the trials are open in multiple centres, so people, some centres might not be full and no longer recruiting, so we kind of keep that information up to date. But then they can access that information through the helpline. So it's very common that people contact me when they're exploring a clinical trial to talk through things about the trial. So where I keep up to date with all of them, I generally have a bit of an understanding about what each trial is looking for. I've done various training with kind of UPATI and MPNE to help me really understand clinical trials in a little in more detail, so I can help not recommend them, but highlight them to people so that they can then take them to their team and discuss if it's potentially an option for them. And then I can also just give some context. So when people contact me on the helpline, I can help explain to them the clinical trials process, understanding where in this process that trial is, whether it is kind of like a first line or a second line treatment. So sometimes people have to be treatment naive to get onto a particular clinical trial. So for example, some clinical trials would only accept patients who have not had a previous form of immunotherapy or a previous form of treatment. Because this mechanism that they're using might involve an immunotherapy or a similar mechanism that hasn't worked for them before.
In my understanding, I do believe if you've just had surgery without them pumping any form of juice, chemical, tablet, whatever into you, that still classes you as treatment naive. Am I correct?
Yes, well, in the form of kind of immunotherapy. So every clinical trial has inclusion and exclusion criteria. So as you can imagine, these trials are designed very specifically to look for very specific outcomes. So they have to control as many variables as possible. So yeah, sometimes I don't think I've come across a trial that isn't suitable for someone who's had surgery. It's more around the systemic treatments, so things like immunotherapies or targeted therapies that they might not have been able to have before. So yeah, surgery is, I'm not aware of anyone who's been invalidated from a trial because of surgery, but there are other considerations. So everyone has their own kind of relevant past medical history. Some people have other conditions, and some people aren't necessarily in the right health to be put forward for that type of trial. So everyone's very individual, and we just help highlight trials that potentially are an option for people when they want to explore them, and then they discuss them with their team, and then their clinical team can put them forward for them if they're suitable.
OMUK manages to balance support, awareness and research so well. I don't think we touched enough on the amount of hats that we wear as such a small charity.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And awareness is a big part of what we do as well, because helping people understand that this condition does exist and the importance of getting eye tests, I think, is a huge part of this. Almost kind of that not necessarily the preventative side of it, but we do understand that an earlier diagnosis can increase your chances of a successful treatment. So that is one huge part of the charity that we do. I'm a little bit less involved in the awareness side of things because I support people quite often after they're diagnosed. But as a charity, we have multiple campaigns. We created the the Eye Patch Day, which has just passed in May, which helps spread awareness of what it's like living with monocular vision or after having treatment. And we just encourage people to make sure they are getting eye tests and something like this doesn't go amiss.
No, absolutely. So once people have become a member, yes, they can phone you. Yes, we can guide them to psychological support. Yes, we've got the community meetings. But if they just want to kind of chat amongst each other, I know we've got our Facebook groups, we've got our patient support group, and we've got one specifically set up for stage 4 patients as well. How does the transition of kind of becoming a member and ending up on the Facebook group work?
Yes, so I think what I've heard someone describe our membership group as the worst possible club with the best possible people, because I can't support absolutely everyone all the time. And we have a really active, private, closed members group. So like you say, we have different groups for patients who maybe are in a different stage. So we have a separate stage 4 group. We have groups for friends and families. And these groups are where people can share their experience and ask questions. And then other members, the groups are so active, other members share what it was like for them or make suggestions of people to reach out to. And I think if we didn't have this group, I would probably be inundated with people, and there would be a lot of people out there probably feeling that they can't bring up and ask what they maybe deem to be a silly question. But we get people asking all sorts of questions because this does affect people in so many different ways. People sometimes will just ask practical things about what eye white did you use or what eye drops were the best for you. And because I don't have that personal experience, I can't always provide that insight. And with our long-standing members and some of our really active members, they're able to support each other with those recommendations, talking about what worked for them or what it was like when they went to a particular hospital or a particular appointment, or what life was like at a different stage of this disease. So I think the private members groups are absolutely vital because it's just that peer-to-peer support that people can share freely. They can talk about what their experience was like, and other people can learn from that and just see that, like I say, it's not when you're on your own and you're isolating, things become very encompassing when you think about them in your head. Sometimes you can just say things out loud. You can write a message in the group, or you can scroll through previous conversations, and I can guarantee any problem or any concern that you have, I bet if you search the keywords in there, there'll be another member who's had very similar, if not the same, concerns. There's no stupid questions in the group. Everyone's really welcoming, and I think that is one vital area of our support that members make the most of. And yeah, it's absolutely vital to allow me to do the work I do. Without the private members group, I think we would just be inundated.
Yeah, and as Matt said, there is no question kind of daft enough. And some of the conversations that are in there is how bad the food is in some of the kind of the access to kind of a decent cup of coffee. But we talk about all kinds of stuff, and people are worried about, I mean, I know there's always a topic of conversation about you go to the opticians and you pay for a whole eye test. You've only got one eye. So, I mean, we do talk about all kinds of stuff, and it's just nice to share this with other people who just get it. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, if you're lying there wide awake, at least you can write something down. It can be very cathartic.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
As such a small charity with actually a very small cohort of the world's population, the fact that you and the team speak to clinicians and these experts in the field, surely we're at a point where we are very well respected within in the health sector.
I think so. I think, especially in the last few years, I think we've really formulated as a serious charity that I think in the past there were some unknowns. Joe did an amazing job with other members before to build this charity up. But over the last few years, we've really managed to bolster out the team and bring that professionalism in. So with my background, I was able to kind of bolster out the helpline services that we offer, make sure that we aren't overstepping the mark. because like I said, when you're not clinically trained, you're not here to give people advice on things about their health. You're here to signpost them, and that's what we do. So I hope that over the last few years, we have gained some more respect within the community, and people understand that we aren't giving people incorrect information. We are the only charity in the UK that supports people with this condition, and we take it very seriously, and we make sure that we get reliable information for people, and we work closely with people like MPNE, who work within Europe, and Jo works very closely with all different clinicians. She attends different conferences, different training. She's always trying to kind of keep up to date with things and make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction. But definitely as a team, I think we're really more as a serious charity now that can. I think the support we give people is. I don't see we don't like pick up the pieces, but we give that kind of that overarching support of people outside in addition to their healthcare. So there isn't necessarily that support in the community for people, and quite often when people leave their hospital, they feel a little bit isolated and kind of they've had all this really intense support and this help, and then they go back to normal life. And that's where we come in really. We help people with that the additional care really, the stuff outside of the hospital, like I say, life, employers, benefits, living life sometimes with a new disability or new effects from treatment. So just helping people adapt really. I think we're kind of very all encompassing in that sense. We kind of wrap everything up for people and just be there as that support for them when they need it.
And once a year, we hold a conference. What's the feedback from the conference? And what would you say to people listening today that they would benefit from attending one of our conferences?
I would definitely recommend joining the conference. We hold them annually. Like you say, we invite experts in all different areas of that impact people. So it's not just ocular oncologist experts here that join us. We have talks from people in all different areas. So I think in the last conference, we had people talking about things like gut health and other relevant things to help support people through their treatment. And the feedback I get, I love the conference itself because you get to meet our members in that natural environment, and it's not just speaking to people at their time of dire need. You actually can kind of spend a couple of days getting to know our members, talking about things outside of just their immediate concerns. And the feedback we get from people is just how informative these conferences are. I think a lot of the time, like I say, people don't have that information to hand, and they don't often have access to ask questions or don't always have access to ask maybe someone who's very specialist in the field or some of the professors who have done lots of research in this area. And it gives them that opportunity to get that insight from them and almost give a bit of like an unofficial second opinion. They can get information that they weren't able to get before, or they can find out new things. So I think they're so valuable, the annual conference. And I think our members think that too.
I know that we're able to support people with their transportation and expenses, and we are very lucky to be sponsored by some of the pharma companies who are very heavily involved in the treatment of ocular melanoma. So it's open to everybody. Don't think that this is something that might not be accessible to you because you're worried about traveling. Please speak to us, and do they speak to you, Matt, as far as being able to gain access to come to the conference?
Generally, I kind of act as a bit of a first point of contact for the charity. So although I help people with signposts and services, I'm just on the end of the phone. So people can pick up the phone and call me with any kind of questions. And I think what you said there is a really important point because members in the past have said to me that they've been reluctant to join the conference because of possibly the costs involved. And as a charity, the conference doesn't take away anything from the core services that we provide people. So we as a charity go out and gain sponsorship and gain funding specifically for the conference. So coming to the conference, if you need that support with travel or accommodation, it doesn't take anything away from anyone else, any of our members or any of the services that we offer. That's something that we additionally go out and obtain funding for so that people don't have those barriers to be able to access the information, really.
And we always, I must have attended 7 conferences now, I think. And it's lovely to meet people, and people come with their partners, their carers, their loved ones, family members. kind of parents or children, depending on which end of the scale you're at. And we have a formal meal as well, which is just wonderful because people just get this whole sense of community, and you really do feel like you're not in this alone, which for a lot of a diagnosis like this, you do. The future, what gives you hope for the future? I mean, you've been within Ocular Melanoma UK since, what did you say, 2020? So what gives you hope for both the charity and support and treatment developments? What are you seeing week by week?
I think even just in the small time that I've been with the charity, I've seen massive changes. So started the charity many years ago and she tells me how things used to be for members back then, and they were absolutely dire, very limited, no treatment options, very limited support, very limited understanding of the condition. And just in that time alone, things have come along massively. And even in the last three to 4 years that I've been with charity, I've visually seen so many changes. We've had treatment options with tebentafusp becoming available for people. There are potentially other treatments on the horizon that could be available for people. That's, I think, just in that small time, it's amazing to see the change, the access that people can get to the treatments they need. But I think looking forward in the future, already at the moment, there just seems to be so much more of an interest in this area. So there are other companies that are looking for treatments. There seems to be a lot more interest from young doctors in this area of ophthalmology. And think Jo explained to me last year how she used to go to conferences and the rooms when they were talking about ocular melanoma were almost empty at times. And in the last couple of years, she's struggled to find a place to sit. And she's quite often finding herself at the back of a very full room. And that is what gives me the most promise, really. Just hearing people that are taking an interest in this. It seems to be an area that pharmaceutical companies are focusing on. So they are trying to get treatments for people. I think we have more clinical trials available at the moment than I've probably seen at any point whilst working for the charity. So just the potential that people are going to be able to access treatments that are right for them, the opportunity that people may actually get to choose between treatments, I think is really empowering. I'm a big advocate for patients kind of leading and personalized treatment and being able to have a say in their treatment. And that's one thing that I find quite hard in the rare cancer space is when people don't have options and they are almost kind of just taking the only thing that they can even get access to. And sometimes it's not the best treatment for them, or they're not amazingly responsive to it. Now that they're potentially going to have options in the future, it's just a world apart from what we've seen in the past.
It's lovely to be able to give people hope and reassurance. And thank you for sharing how we can access as patients the support that OMUK can provide. Is there anything you would like to pass on to somebody newly diagnosed? What would be, if you had something to say to somebody newly diagnosed, what would Matt's words be?
I think anyone newly diagnosed, just please don't hesitate to reach out. I think you don't realize how isolating it is until you realize how much support is out there and how the world is different when you've got that support. Just connecting with the charity, it doesn't mean that you have to be talking about cancer every day or have this on your mind. I think if anything, we can take some of that weight away from you and give you that support. So I would just ask anyone, please we don't charge for membership. Please join as a member, look at the services that we offer. Just reach out to me on the phone. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a heavy discussion, but just introducing yourself, let me know where you're at is always really important because we have quite because I get to speak to people who are members and we're not supporting thousands and thousands of people. So when I'm able to speak to people, I'm able to really remember their stories, and I individually know what different members are doing with their lives and where they're at in their treatment. So there's some people that I know that when things change, I know their situation, I could reach out to them and give them an update. So I would just encourage anyone really, reach out to the charity, connect with us, let us know you're there, let us know that you're a patient or you're affected by this condition, and then decide how much you want to be involved with us and whether you want to have regular contact or regular support, you want to just drop in here and there, or you want to have absolutely no regular contact with us at all, at least we're there and you know we're there when you need us. And if things ever do change, we're just at the end of the phone, or you have access to our membership, and it's not a big deal then to reach out because you're already connected with us. So that would be my biggest thing, really. Just don't sit here and suffer in silence.
No, have a look around our website. There's the wellbeing section and the contact us, and there's lots of resources. Some of our previous podcasts talk about treatment options. You can listen to other patients who I've chatted to, some of the crazy things they've done, climbing Kilimanjaro, walking across the Sahara. There's all sorts of stuff that you can get involved with. And we've got our wellbeing as well. We do a little yoga group, for a gentle movement group, which has been lovely. We've had that up and running for about 6 months now. So there's a bunch of us on a Tuesday morning that go online. And if you don't make it online, you can always catch us up on recording as well. So we do have a YouTube channel, don't we, Matt, where kind of past historical notes and discussions from conferences have been uploaded as well, if people want to look at anything they may have missed. If they're newly diagnosed, I know all of last year's conference and previous years before, there's some very, very interesting talks on there.
Certainly. And just to add to that, really, is though this is something that we are developing. So we understand that there is all that, the other encompassing care that can help people, like you mentioned, things like yoga. So we are trying to develop our services. We are a really, really small charity, and the team, it surprises me sometimes how much we achieve for how small we are. But our members hub is something we are going to develop over the years, and there will be more resources and more support for people outside of that immediate kind of treatment options and information, like you're saying.
Oh, it's brilliant. Thank you so much, Matt. It's been wonderful to talk to you today, and for all the work that you do. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice speaking with you, as always.
If you or someone you know has been affected by the topics discussed in this episode, support and information are available. You can visit Ocular Melanoma UK at www.omuk.org for guidance, resources to connect with our helpline, and others who understand. Remember, no one should face ocular melanoma alone.